Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Amanda, and this is essentially a vlog of me learning to unmask my autism and ADHD ever since I got diagnosed about 2 years ago. And I have some really important topics to talk about in this video, but I would like to reiterate the disclaimer that I always put up here is one, that I'm not a medical professional. This is all coming from lived experience. And I purposely do as little editing on possible in my videos because I would like to normalize what autistic and ADHD looks like as much as I can. I mean, it's not a real environment. I'm talking to a camera and not an actual human, but my fidgeting and where I sometimes forget what I'm trying to say in the middle of a sentence is very accurate to my real life. And I want people to see what it's like to be autistic and ADHD. So today's video is going to be about access friction. And this is something that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I have spent so much time of my life on and off pondering about it. It's such an important topic, and there isn't really a good solution, but the conversations around it are so important. So what is access friction? So I'm going to briefly read something just for accuracy. Access friction refers to the challenges and barriers that arise when individuals with conflicting needs must share the same space, particularly in the context of disability. These conflicting needs can create friction, making it difficult to design spaces or systems that accommodate everyone equally. Resolving access friction involves compromise, adaptive design, and inclusive practices to ensure equitable access for all. Okay. I'm going to give kind of what would be like an extreme example, but this comes up and is important because even things that aren't as extreme as the example I'm about to give are still very important. But the extreme example helps really highlight what access friction is very clearly. So let's say you have two people and one has a life alert service dog. This service dog has been specifically trained to make sure that this human doesn't die. So some service dogs, not all of them, but some service dogs are trained to kind of smell hormones and endorphins. That's not the right word. Anyway, they basically can like smell on a human if they are about to have like a diabetic attack, sometimes a seizure, different things that could literally cause that person to die if they don't take a medicine or do a preventative care before. And these service dogs are like amazing. But anyway, all service dogs are amazing. Those, like, to me are just so cool. Then you might have a person with a more rare dog allergy that is actually a life-threatening dog allergy. I don't think that's very common, but it does exist. These two people cannot exist in the same space at the same time because their conflicting needs are so drastic. The person with the life-threatening dog allergy cannot be in the same space with a person who needs their service dog to exist. And that's where compromise, adaptive design, and inclusive practices have to come into play. Now, I don't know enough about those people who have those kinds of service dogs. I do know in general, everybody with a service dog has to have some sort of backup plan because dogs are not like a machinery equipment. They're a living being. So for instance, my son has an autism service dog, but if Milo, my son's service dog, is ever sick or like just not feeling well, then he gets a day off. Like you, just like humans, you don't go to work when you're sick, right? And so Ira then would have to have a backup plan for whatever activity that he needed to do if his service dog wasn't available. So people with life alert dogs, I'm assuming they do have some sort of backup plan that they can participate in an activity without their service dog. Maybe it is taking medicine beforehand. Maybe it's having a human. Maybe it's wearing a monitor that they normally wouldn't wear. Or, for some people, if they can't do something with their service dog, then they may not just be able to participate. And so the person with a life-threatening dog allergy, if they find out that an event that they want to go to, there's somebody else that has a service dog there, they're going to have to compromise. They're going to have to I can go to the event a different day between the two. Like either one of them may have to reschedule for a different day, or maybe they have a specific medicine that they don't take all the time, but they could take to be around this dog. I doubt it, but I'm just throwing, that's where the compromises have to happen. And the thing is, with access friction, there's never going to be a solution that's one size fits all. Every single access friction situation is going to be individual to the people that are involved in the scenario and the event that they are trying to coexist in. So I was talking about this all on Threads the other day, and that's kind of I kind of want to go into a tangent, but I'm gonna try to stay focused here for a second. So I have to tangent just a teeny bit. Okay, so what happened is on Threads the other day, somebody was talking about wanting to knit in a theater, and a lot of people. Somebody asked her to stop knitting because it was annoying them. And so she did. And that was the original post. I did not re-quote that post or anything like that. That post just kind of sparked the topic of access friction in my head. And I started a whole conversation where that post was the inspiration for the topic, but I wasn't really going into the details of that specific scenario. I was taking it to a more philosophical arena. Unfortunately, I didn't communicate that very well, and because that was my inspiration. So I was talking about knitting in a theater as an access friction to somebody who found knitting needles annoying, but I wasn't necessarily referring back to the original poster. A lot of people thought that I was, and so they were arguing points from that, and I'm like, no, I'm just talking about, yeah. So I kind of got myself into a little social media snafu because I didn't communicate that my intention was a big philosophical question and not this specific thing. Although I do have notes about that specific thing too. But so I will say that I don't remember her name. I'm so sorry if you're watching. I don't know if she watches my YouTube videos. But she called me out at one point. She was like, people are arguing and you are not listening to them. And she felt attacked. So I apologized to her and I said, I hear that you feel attacked by my post. I'm very sorry. That was not my intention. I did not communicate that I was trying to kind of take this at a philosophical level. And I was playing devil's advocate too, which is confused a lot of people. I learned something because I learned that was not the avenue to have this discussion for a couple of reasons. And I did confuse some people, and people were calling me a hypocrite because I was playing devil's advocate at some point. I was talking about it from her perspective. I was talking about it from his perspective, the guy who was complaining. And I also was talking about access friction and people. The other thing that my brain did was I was taking each individual person who was talking to me, and my brain put them in as one person that I was having a conversation with. So my brain just hyperfixated on it that day. And so when I responded to one person, I, in my head, had the conversation going from all of these people, but this person only had the information that I was talking directly to them about, not like the whole big, huge conversation that was happening in my brain space. And so I caused a lot of confusion, and I do apologize for that. But for me, on my end, it was absolutely a fascinating conversation. And I worked through a lot of fun things about access friction in my head because I like to process out loud with people. So on my end, I was just like, oh, this is a fun conversation. And other people were feeling very personally attacked, which I apologize. And I did not mean to attack anyone. And unfortunately, in a text type of communication, tone doesn't come across. So while I was just like having a fun, lively debate, other people were reading it aggressively. And looking back, I can see that why that happened. And I, am very sorry for it and did not intend for that to happen. And hopefully in this form where I'm in a video, people can kind of understand that for me, it was just like a big brain puzzle. Okay, so let me back up to where I was talking about. Hold on, I'm going to pause. Okay, so another person on the threads when I was talking, we were talking about like the dog situation, and she doesn't have an allergy to a dog, but because of her neurodivergence, dogs are too much sensory. She didn't really go into specific detail, but she just said because of her neurodivergence, she cannot be around dogs. I took it to assume maybe a sensory reason, but there could be other things too that she just didn't say. And so we kind of had like our own little mini conversation for a bit there. And so she was saying that she went to a writing retreat and someone had a service dog there. And so access friction. So I don't know where I was. I got interrupted by my dogs. Anyway, so I was talking about this woman, and she was at a writing retreat and someone had a service dog. And because of her neurodivergence, she could not be in the same space with the dog. And so I asked her if she was willing to share, like, what did they end up working out as a compromise? And I was thinking before she responded, like, how, if I was an organizer of an event, how could you handle this? And I was like, depends on the size of the writing conference, because some of them are really big and they might have multiple seminars. So you would try to coordinate where those two people weren't in the same seminar at the same time. And hopefully they had like separate lodgings, and meal times would often be a little tricky because a lot of times at retreats like that, everybody eats in one like big cafeteria together. So that's kind of what I was thinking. But if it was a very small writing seminar where there's just one like group that's spending their whole time together, that would be much more difficult. And of course, that is what she said. It was a small group, but it worked out for their compromise that they basically just spent their time on opposite sides of the room from each other, and that she acknowledged that the other person's with the service dog's needs were a little bit perhaps like a stronger need, and so that she was willing to set aside some of her own needs to coexist in the space with the person who needed the service dog. She said that there was one meal time where things got a little dicey, but otherwise the event went okay. So a lot of times when you have two people with conflicting needs, if a compromise can't be reached where both people are like equally, their needs are met, sometimes you do have to try to evaluate if one person's needs might be more than the other, which, ideally we want everyone's needs to be equal. But, we know that as a society, most disabled people, we're just happy to like get the bare minimum, unfortunately. So we're used to like some give and take. So the reason why, one reason why this is very important in, I think, the autism community is because autism being a spectrum, a lot of times when you have autistic people together, there is a lot of conflicting needs that happen in a space. So, for instance, I'm autistic ADHD, and so are both my kids. Both of my kids need to have stimulation of music almost all the time. Their brains work better when they have music in the background. I need quiet. Like right now, I've got my little diffuser going because I enjoy it so much. But the sound of the diffuser machine is, I don't know if y'all can hear it on my mic, but it's just a low hum. And I'm very, very, very aware of it. And it's really annoying. And I don't do it all the time, but I've got some peppermint in there and that's really calming for me. And I like stimming to it visually. I don't know if you can really see it well on camera in the light, but this one, the steam looks like fire, and it can sometimes go into multicolors, like a rainbow and stuff. Right now, I've just got it like an orange fake flame, and I like it. So I put up with that noise, but background noises tend to drive me crazy. And if I was having a high sensory day, that thing would be off. But so my kids and I have very opposite noise needs. And so our compromise is they pretty much wear headphones all the time because they can control what music they listen to it that way. Oftentimes they're listening to classical music, but my daughter especially loves, oh God, what's the genre called? It's basically video game music. It's classical, but it's really like high energy sometimes. I don't know. And then I don't know. I can't. Hi, Milo. So both my kids, they have headphones. To us, that is a disability aid for them. They wear them almost all the time, to the point where we actually sometimes have medical issues where their ears don't get enough airing out, where we have to deal with ear infections. So we have to like remind them, like, okay, take your headphones off some of the day so that your ears, can breathe. And I have noise dampening earplugs at reach like almost all the time. I have so many sets now. I've got a review on this channel, I think, of Hear Protect and Loop. And then on my other channel, the Neurospicy Mama, I have, I think, even more detailed review videos of these two particular brands. I like the Hear Protect. I wasn't going to do a whole like mini ad here. Non-sponsored. They did sponsor me at one point a long time ago, but this is not sponsored. These I've bought. I like them because their whole thing is silicone, and so they're super, super soft. Some people just don't like things in their ears at all, so this wouldn't work for you. But the loops, I can feel more, but I like them because they look like jewelry sticking out of your ear. The Hear Protects go in, and they are like almost completely invisible. Like you like barely would know that someone had one in. And these are just really comfortable. Anyway, so noise dampening earplugs are like one of my best tools and friends. And so we can coexist in the same environment because, they're playing their music in their headphones. And if, for instance, they were playing a video game or something that was more in the room, I would put my earbuds in. So conflicting needs, working out a compromise. But going back to the knitting needle conversation, I think was very interesting because, for one thing, we don't know if she was disabled and knitting because that was a STEM. But that's the thing. You never, ever can know if somebody has an invisible disability. And one of my arguments on the threads was that we need to, as a society, start being more graceful towards people who are doing behaviors that aren't harming anybody else. But then people in my comments were saying that it was harming the man because he was annoyed. And again, we don't know necessarily, was his annoyance because he was neurodivergent and the repetitive motion in the peripheral of his eye. And people were saying the clacking noise might have been too much for him. I understand people talking about the clacking noise, but unless she had metal knitting needles are not that loud, especially in a movie theater. And this is where it gets very tricky because I am superposing my personal preference and understanding onto somebody else who you really can't do that. But like, I know I am super sensitive to loud and repetitive noises, or loud and or repetitive. Even if it's a quiet noise, if it's repetitive, it will drive me crazy. And yet I have never, ever been annoyed by somebody knitting in my space. And it happens a lot. At my book club, people are knitting all the time as we're sitting there talking, and it has never been disruptive at a quiet book club, much less a loud movie theater. But again, that is part of the conversation. Like, I can't tell somebody else what their needs are. When I was a child, I was cold all the time. And my mom would tell me, "You're not cold. It's not cold. There's no way you can be cold." And I would get so upset and frustrated because she wasn't cold, but I was. And as a kid, I just got told that I wasn't cold and I just had to deal with it. So for me to tell somebody those knitting needles are not annoying you is the same thing. But it's really it's hard because it's like, oh, how could that actually really annoy somebody so much that they would ask her to stop? So again, compromise and needs to happen. He asked her to stop in that scenario, and she did. And that kind of brought me up to this whole other conversation that I'm going to talk about in just a second. But I wanted to say one more thing. But I mean, they're kind of together. Sorry, my brain is doing that thing where I've got so many ideas and I want to get them out all at once. Calm down. Mm-hmm. Self-regulating for a second. Okay, so knitting needles. In that situation, I personally think that she should have been able to knit quietly. I don't think it's that disruptive. If he was sitting right next to her and her arm was like, moving big and tapping him, then yes, that would be a problem. But a lot of people are knitting like just seriously, like small little things. So again, it's a unique situation. If she was knitting very small, not doing big arm movements, because some knitting is very tiny, very quiet, I don't think it would be a problem. Which leads me to my second thing, which when I was going through this whole thread thing, it was like this big, huge moment of clarity. And it has to do with disabilities, but also just with society in general. And I was bringing up on the other side of him, perhaps, again, going into a hypothetical, because we don't know the situation, somebody might have been sitting there eating popcorn, a repetitive, crunchy, loud noise. And that is normalized behavior for a movie theater. So nobody would turn to this guy and be like, "Hey, your popcorn is really annoying me. You need to stop." Because that is a normalized behavior in a movie theater, it's acceptable. But quietly knitting by yourself over here, where I see isn't harming anybody, is like, oh, stop. And I had this big moment of clarity and I'm very curious if this translates to other countries, because people understand right now that America is in a crisis moment. And America is very much a patriarchal society. And I am very curious, like I said, how many other countries are still strongly in a patriarchal situation where it is systematic. Everything exists for the patriarchy. And that's why I was like, oh my God, even this. Because any behavior that doesn't uphold a cis, straight, white, male behavior or trait gets ostracized. And this is why disabled people in our society are ostracized and scorned, because they are not, well, I guess I should add able-bodied, cis, straight, able-bodied white men. That is what our society is built on. And so the popcorn behavior has been normalized in our society. It's fine. Knitting is like, oh, why is someone knitting in a theater? That's weird. It gets ostracized. It's not normalized. And so women, queer, disabled, and people of color get automatically, their behaviors are ostracized. And if you think about it, women are expected to exist in public under the male gaze in a very quiet, demure, like, don't make waves kind of way. Anytime a woman makes loud or makes herself big, she gets made fun of by media, by other people. And also, I would like to say that there are women, queer, disabled, and people of color who enforce the patriarchy because it's been internalized so much. So, to their own detriment. So you will see women making fun of other women because the patriarchy is so internalized. And one of the reasons why I love my big, bright, bold makeup on the days that I wear makeup. For my blind viewers, I basically painted a sunset on my eyes. It goes from teal burgundy to a sunflower yellow with a little bit of white eyeliner in the corners. My normal makeup look is usually blues, purples, and teals, but today I went with this sunset because it's so bright, beautiful, and it also matches the striped shirt that I'm wearing. Is because it goes against beauty norms. Beauty norms are set by men. Men want women to look a certain way. And so there's a copy of how women will, for a while, it's like everybody was blonde because that was like the beauty standard. And women are also upholding other women to this beauty standard that is honestly set up by men. And it was like crystal clear for me because I saw a TikTok video and she's like, isn't it weird that what is beautiful makeup is often what porn stars wear? Because she was just like, that is weird. Why is, beautiful makeup on women popularized in the porn industry? And it was like, because men set the standards. Cis, straight, able-bodied, white men. And if you don't get in line, you're ostracized. So this goes with disabled behavior. Anytime somebody who is stimming or in a wheelchair, using a mobility aid, doing anything that isn't the big long thing, gets ostracized because our society is set up for a homogenized experience, unfortunately. And we need people to wake up and see this because it's so important, especially right now in America. Queer people get ostracized for being outside of that norm. So do people of color. So just existing as a woman, queer, a disabled person, or a person of color literally is resistance. I mean, you can see it being played out right now in America because they're wanting to round up all of the brown colored people and ship them away. It's literally playing out in our country right now. And, I've mentioned I'm trying to not make my videos too political, but politics are life, and American politics are affecting our daily life. And this affects disabled people because our behaviors are inherently against cis, straight, able-bodied white men. And so that goes against the patriarchal norms. So we are immediately oppressed and ostracized. And it's important to note that as a disabled person, our needs are also minimized. We don't have special needs. We have human needs. Our needs are just as valid as an able-bodied minded person. They are just different. And so I'd like to reiterate, when you see someone knitting in public, no, that doesn't mean they're disabled, but it is a behavior that, in certain situations isn't normal. And anytime, and it affects the disabled community because we are part of a marginalized community. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like anything that is not a normal behavior gets ostracized. So we need to start celebrating the unique things that are happening in our world and the people who are doing unique things that don't harm anybody. And yes, that's why I'm saying devil's advocate. That's why people call me a hypocrite in that, because it's like access friction. Was her knitting actually really conflicting need with the man that she was sitting by? Or was he just not happy that she was doing a behavior that wasn't normal? We don't know because we weren't there for the whole actual real thing, but it is something that I took to a philosophical query. And just to be clear, it doesn't even matter that it was a man. It could have been a woman who was like, hey, that's annoying. Because again, women, queer, disabled, and people of color also enforce these because of that internalized brainwashing that we've all had to the patriarchy. So yes, it was a man who told her to be quiet, but I could see another woman doing it too, because we enforce these to our own detriment until we wake up and see that we're harming ourselves. Just like a disabled person can be ableist, a person of color can be racist, a queer person can be against LGBTQ+. We all can act against our own self-interest, unfortunately. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been one of my favorite ones to make in a very long time. I almost want to kind of like try to readdress this again in the future in a shortened version, because I know that like longer videos often don't get as many views because, our attention span as a society is short right now. But I do know and appreciate, especially from y'all's comments, that a lot of people actually do like the longer, more in-depth videos. So I really appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to speak about it in depth, because there is so much nuance that needs to happen for access friction. It is not a cut and dried conversation. It is one that is going to be ongoing. And we need lots and lots of voices and opinions. And I want you to write down in the comment section where you have had access friction happen in your life, where your needs have conflicted with other people. And like, was it able to be worked out? Were your needs suppressed? That kind of thing. And I also love to hear from other countries, like I said, because Americans, we as a collective are waking up to how much propaganda that we've had as a country, and media suppression and all of that. I had to pause because I'm like, wait, there's one more thing I need to do. So yes, please, because I do feel like this video is so important. So if you can take the time, I hate to ask this because I think that y'all are doing this, but if you just forget, please comments help the video go out. So if you don't have anything like, specific because you just want to take it in, you can comment on my pretty makeup. Just, comments help the video go out, and reshares and saving the video all help. So I appreciate it more than I can say. And until the next one, guys, bye.